It's time for a little bonus episode here on the Vault, so welcome in. It is Wednesday, May 10th, here as we get ready for the 2023 NFL regular season schedule release. We're going to have plenty of more coverage on that on Thursday night at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. Sarah and I will be live right up until 10 o'clock for the unveiling of that. We're going to have Brian McFarland, Ravens salary cap analyst, joining us in just a couple minutes, but we got to, because literally right before the start of this taping, Sarah, we learned one of the first schedule leaks for Baltimore. We got to cover that really quickly. So, as you know, for just the second time in franchise history, the Ravens will be playing an international game, and they will be going back to London. As you see there, week 6 against the Titans. Sorry, Nashville fans, not this year. The Ravens and Titans will play in London at Tottenham Stadium week 6. So there you have it.
Bobby, I woke up to a DM from UK Ravens. So we are currently trying to schedule them to come onto that live stream Thursday night. Obviously, that starts 7:30 p.m. our time. Not the best time there in London, but they're trying to figure it out, and we're trying to get that all set up to get their reaction. I guarantee you, they are super excited out there in London.
Oh, heck yeah. Yeah, I would imagine so. I mean, that group is already super, super diehard Ravens as it is. So for them to get another game here for the first time since 2017 is awesome. And as Jeff notes, just for your programming and calendars, October 15th, 9:30 Eastern, because of the 5 or 6 hour time difference there. So really looking forward to it. Be More Around Town will be sponsoring our live stream show, and they already will have the link in the description of this video, but they are already offering a trip to go across the pond with the Ravens. So be on the lookout for that. And again, week 6, Lamar's first international game, and the Ravens look to, again, avenge one of the worst losses in team history, which we all know is well documented, back in 2017 against Jacksonville, 44-7. It was a stomping. Okay, we didn't bring him in to speak about this, but again, we had to cover that. We will have more on that in the coming days, but let's get his reaction anyway. Brian McFarland joins us now on the Vault. Welcome back. Thanks so much for your time, Brian. We're going to talk about what is your bread and butter, but you going to be going to this game?
Probably not. I would go to Nashville. Nashville is a great trip. It really is a great trip. And but overseas, that's just not in the budget right now, for sure.
Well, Brian, we've covered the contract of Lamar Jackson extensively. But before we fully moved on from it, I wanted to do a deep dive on all of it. Now that all the details are out, there's nobody who can help us cover it better than you. I've tried, I've been covering the Ravens for about 20 years now. I've tried to learn about the cap and all these things so that, I don't sound like a complete idiot around here, but you are the expert of all. We can see here for the audio only listeners, Brian McFarland, you need to give him a follow at Ravens salary cap. There's nobody who does it better. So Brian, from like 1,000-foot picture, okay, I'm going to give you a multiple choice on this. Choose an adjective, okay, that best describes Lamar's contract from a player perspective, okay? I'm going to give you spectacular, strong, fair, weak, terrible, and then I'm going to ask you to do the same from a team perspective. So one of those adjectives from a player perspective.
I think I'll go with strong, mainly because of the no cap pledge or the no tag pledge at the end. Okay. I think that gives, regardless of the numbers, I think that gives Lamar an incredible amount of leverage in the future. And a good place to look right now will be watching the Cowboys and Dak Prescott as he enters the last year of his 4-year deal, and he had a no tag pledge as well. And some of the reporting out of Dallas is he's got them over the barrel, so to speak. He really has. And as this goes, it's leverage. It's not leverage in the next couple years, but when we get to year 4 of that 4 or 5 of that deal, of Lamar's deal, and those cap numbers go astronomically high, that's when you would normally expect, they could be restructured, but you would normally hope for an extension at that point. But in his back pocket and in the back of the Ravens' brain is, if we don't get something done by the beginning of the 5th year, we're back to what we were just went through over the last 2 years in a sense, except the Ravens don't have, as they did this time, the leverage of we're going to put the tag on you, and we're going to limit in a way what you can do. There won't be that. They won't have that in their back pocket. So I think from Lamar's perspective, that's a huge win. The no trade clause, I don't think that means that much. But the no tag provision at the end is just tremendous for Lamar.
So give me an adjective from a team perspective then. Spectacular, strong, fair, weak, terrible.
I think it's fair because the numbers are right where in a way they should be. Obviously, it's not fully guaranteed. So from that standpoint, it's a win for the Ravens. This contract is just the natural progression of quarterback contracts, the way things normally go. And it's really just a bump. What's it, a $10 million total bump? And I think it's a $10 million. It was a couple million in fully guaranteed money from the offer that was reported back in September. So from the Ravens standpoint, the Hurts deal helped because it obviously got things moving, and maybe it, I don't know, this may not be a fair way of saying it, but maybe it got Lamar to be more realistic that, this is a good offer because Hurts, who doesn't have an MVP, but although who did take his team to the Super Bowl, got the next big contract and you're next in line. So, from that standpoint, just getting it done from the Ravens standpoint is a win, because now he's here. He'll be here. You don't have to wait till he shows up in, September 1st or whatever it might be. Now he gets to be with Monken and get to learn the offense and things like that. So, from that standpoint, just logistically, I guess, is a win for the Ravens. And the money's where it should be. It's where it's always should have been, to be honest with you. So, maybe it's a strong, I don't know if it could be a strong deal for both. Because in a way you feel like somebody's got to win here. But I think it's a good, I'll go strong deal for both because Ravens have certainty now. Now 3 years from now or 4 years from now, we get to that fourth year when those cap numbers go up to 72.5 million. They're going to need to go to Lamar and say, we got to get this extended. We got to spread this money out. And, who knows how things will play out. Obviously, this one wasn't very smooth, to say the least. So, but at least they've got, for the next 3 years, they don't have to worry about it.
Yeah. Oh, why don't we get to, how the money breaks down by category in terms of stacking up, against other contracts in NFL history. Signing bonus first, cash in 1 year first, 156 million through the first 3 years first, 122.5 million in the first 2 years first, 52 million on average per season first, total guaranteed money 185 second, and then in total value 260 million second. Where do you see the compromise after seeing these categories?
Well, I don't know that. Like I said, this is the natural progression of contracts. So obviously most the next contract, and if Burrow or Herbert or Lawrence is next, all of those will become second, and most likely, certainly with Burrow, at some point, and then there's already reports that Mahomes, who signed a sweetheart of a deal with Kansas City. Talk about team friendly, and he's been underpaid because he's now just hitting the big money of his contract. And now, of course, I imagine after seeing the contracts explode since then, it's not going to be another 10-year deal for him. It's going to be, we're going to just restructure these last, 6 or 7 years they have. And, but he's going to get up. He's going to top everybody. Why not? So, and he may wait for Burrow, and then okay, Burrow, that's the next big number, and then Mahomes comes back in and just breaks it. So, I don't about compromise. It's just this is where it should be. Honestly, we've talked about it since the numbers came out in September, and the numbers were these are just a bump on those, but they really are where they should be. The total guarantees, that's going to be fully guaranteed in a year, and then in 2024, his 2025 salary becomes fully guaranteed. So, then you're looking, then you're pushing this over 200 million essentially fully guaranteed because they're not cutting him before next season. So that's when 2025 becomes fully guaranteed. That's another 21 million that becomes fully guaranteed. So it's like I said, I think it's a strong deal for both sides. It's done. To be honest with you, it's done.
Do you not feel that Lamar kind of, based on reports, compromised in the sense that he didn't get the fully guaranteed, even though that to me is the compromise. Like you said, the 185 total will be guaranteed in the year. And so maybe that was the way that they could, kind of compromise from, a Deshaun Watson type fully guaranteed.
Yeah, I mean, I've been saying that all along. These vesting guarantees, where you've got your fully guaranteed number of 135, but then the next year, the next year becomes fully guaranteed, and the next year becomes fully guaranteed. So you can essentially, or virtually, however you want to call it, make it really close to being fully guaranteed. So yeah, I mean, if he was truly stuck on the fully guaranteed, and I mean, there's some reports saying he was, some saying he wasn't, certainly seemed like he was, and that's a big compromise. But I mean, and then the trade-off, I guess, is he compromises there, comes back to, I hate to say it this way because this is too strong, but comes back to reality of the way these contracts, the history of these contracts work. And then the Ravens compromised by giving up the possibility of tagging him in 5 years. So, that's why I think it's probably considered a strong deal both sides, and that those are the compromises they both had to make.
So, Brian, before I started working in the NFL, I would just read, a headline that said, Lamar Jackson 5-year deal, 260 million. And that's all I really cared about as a fan. But then once I started learning more about it, once you start learning about, there's just so many details in these contracts, I start to learn that there's so many categories that are important. So I wanted to kind of, with this graphic up, we can see these different categories. Obviously, all the categories combined is what creates a strong or weak contract. But if you were doing a contract for yourself, or if you had a client and you were doing a contract, how would you rank the importance of these different categories? Would you say like the new money over 3 years is most important? The fully guaranteed money is most important? That tag and trade clause is most important? The money per year? Like, how would you rank these categories? Because for me, from what I understand, it's really the new money over the 3 years. And then maybe also that fully guaranteed, but it's never really been accomplished prior to Cousins and Deshaun Watson. So I've always felt that the new money over 3 years was the most important. Would you put that at the top of the list of importance of these categories?
Yeah, probably. I mean, the total value of the deal isn't that important because obviously players can be cut. And then obviously when you have they're restructured anyway or extended later, especially quarterback deals. So that number and obviously that the average per year goes along with that. But yes, the money over the 3 years, because you're unlikely to get cut, in those 3 years because of, especially when you're talking a $72.5 million bonus, counting $14.5 million in each year. And if you get cut after a second year, you're looking at close to 50 million or 40 to 50 million in dead money. So that money, you're not getting cut, especially on a deal this size, over those 3 years. So how much you get first year, how much you get over the 3 years is probably the big correct parameters to look at. And obviously guaranteed money, because that goes hand in hand. I mean, if the guaranteed money goes beyond 3 years, well, okay, that's even better. But usually they don't. Usually it's within that first 3 years. And obviously there's some option bonuses in here as well. So, I mean, it's, I think, I think those are definitely the things to really look at. I mean, you hear 260 million, oh, wow, 52 million a year, but he's not going to, it's unlikely that he's going to play these 5 years exactly the way this contract is, because we get, again, year 4 and 5, something's going to probably happen. I mean, it's what happened with Flacco's deal. That was a deal that was really set up. And that was, he also had, that was a franchise tag situation too. He didn't get to the franchise tag. They got it done right before the deadline. But that was a 6-year deal, if I remember correctly. But after 3, it was one that had to be redone after 3 years.
Yeah, like you said too, those reports are starting to really surface about Mahomes. Get the sense that something's going to get done before the start of the season, and he's only a few years into his deal, so that makes sense. We wanted to get your reaction to something that Peter King said recently, so listen to this.
The Baltimore Ravens gave Lamar Jackson really what he wanted in this deal. And look, I'm sure he would have wanted 260 million guaranteed, but I think what he really wanted in this deal is to be shown that we value you more than any quarterback in football. Lamar Jackson has seen that the Baltimore Ravens have treated him financially better than any quarterback in football. And I think that amount of respect was really important to him.
You agree with that, Brian?
I mean, again, the offer they made him in September was pretty much that kind of, that kind of deal. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, obviously, I think all the players want that. I mean, it's a badge of honor. I'm the highest paid player. Other than, again, the Deshaun Watson, fully guaranteed money. So, I mean, I think they've always respected him. I think they've always, treated him with respect. So obviously show me the money is the ultimate respect, I guess. So I don't know. I think that's a little overstated. Like, as like I said, the September offer was, top of the market at that time too. So, but yeah, hey, whatever.
Well, it is interesting. We pulled up here from Jason over the cap. I know you respect him a lot of good numbers over there. He kind of showed the cash flow in each year. And, we were just saying that the first 3 years is like the most important in each contract. And still, I think Deshaun Watson had the better deal because it's fully guaranteed
Right.
on 5 years. So that's why I think Peter King overstated it. But maybe the second most, because looking at this from Jason, he gets, I mean, by a large margin, the most money in the first year, 80 million, beats Jalen Hurts by 20 there, then 112 million top of the league, and then 156 million in that third year. So that's definitely top of the league, even better than Deshaun. It's just that the Deshaun's back end, he gets guaranteed too. So in that sense, this is why I always say, Brian, like, from an agent perspective, they want to have some sort of win so they can put out, in Twitter, hey, this is the most money in NFL history, $52 million a year. Well, who cares? Like, that's a great thing to say, because that we're not going to see the back end of that. But what really is a win, but it doesn't resonate as much with the fans, is that 156 million in the first 3 years. That's the most ever in NFL history. So that's really the win, but it doesn't resonate as much with fans.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, that's just the idea of digging into those numbers deeper. And that's where, the agents, you're right. It's just, hey, look at these big numbers. But yeah, and Lamar, I mean, hey, without an agent, he struck a pretty strong deal. I don't think there's any question about that. Might have gotten done sooner with an agent, but you can't complain about anything, from a Lamar perspective at this point. But again, Mahomes, those numbers, all those numbers will become number 2 in a couple of months, or maybe there'll be 3 by the beginning of the season. They might be 3 or 4, depending upon, if Herbert comes, gets a deal done too, or I don't know that Herbert will top it. I don't know if Herbert will top it or not, but it is sort of the progression, the next guy along. I mean, when Flacco got his contract, he wasn't the best quarterback in football. When Kyler Murray got his, he wasn't the best quarterback in football. So, so that's just the way contracts work.
So, Brian, what do you make of the timing of this? Because, like you said, this deal is not that dissimilar from the one reportedly offered in September. In fact, Eric DeCosta said that on an interview with Mike Florio. So I know actually yesterday Eric DeCosta was on the lounge, and he did say, he's like, I will say this, like, getting Lamar done before the draft made quarterback less important in the draft. So I'm just trying to, what do you make of the timing of the deal? Like, it had been lingering for a year and a half, almost 2 years. This deal isn't that dissimilar. Jalen play into it? Did the draft play into it? Was there more stuff? Why that day, that week, did they get it done?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm only speculating here, but the Hurts deal, I think, showed that the fully guaranteed is just not going to happen. And And I don't know, maybe it was, you know, we don't know who contacted Lamar, if they did or did not, as far as other teams. Maybe he just felt, you know, it's not happening elsewhere. The Ravens have, you know, it sounds like they, you know, sent a upgraded offer after the Hurts deal. And, you know, maybe it was just, I'm done with this. This is, you know, I'm like the rest of us, you know, I'm done with this. It's time to get this done. This is a good deal. I've pushed it as far as I can. You know, I just, maybe he wanted certainty too. You know, maybe he wanted a $72.5 million check in his bank account, you know, direct deposit into his account. I can't even imagine what that looks like.
Monopoly money.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think I mean, I think it probably was as simple as that. You know, the Hurts deal set the parameters. It said to Lamar, okay, the deal they offered in September was pretty good. It was, you know, it was fair as far as that goes. Yeah, it's not fully guaranteed. And now they, you know, Hurts topped that, and now they gave me a little more, and, you know, let's get this done. Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting what would have happened in the draft had it not been. Would they have drafted a quarterback? Would they have, which would have changed the complexion of everything, you know? So, yeah, so I think maybe that was in his mind too. Maybe, you know, I like it. You know, he said, as he said in his press conference, he didn't want to go anywhere else. He wanted to be here. And so maybe it was just, okay, I've pushed this, you know, as far as I want to at this point, and let's get something done.
I know we've covered a lot of this already, but I wanted to bring up your chart breakdown here, essentially, that kind of goes through the annual salary of Lamar's, you know, 5-year, $260 million deal. So can you, you know, as best you can for our audio only listeners, can you take us through this year by year? And then also, you know, would you say that this is essentially, looking at these numbers, a 3-year deal, given the jump in cap space in year 4, kind of like we were suggesting earlier on, and a potential restructure to come at that point?
Yeah, I mean, I think it, well, and obviously we don't know exactly where the cap will be in 3 or 4 years. By that 4th year, 74.5 million sounds like a huge number, obviously. But if the cap is, you know, it's 225 now, if it's, you know, if it's 300 or 400, you know, if it's 320 or something like that by then maybe 74 isn't as big of a number as it looks at this point. So yeah, I mean, he gets the big signing bonus of $72.5 million this year with a $7.5 million base salary. So that cap charge is 22 million. So that's down 10.416 million from the franchise tag. So that gave them some nice cap relief, a little cushion there. And then next year there's an option bonus, a $17.5 million option bonus. In 2025, there's a $22.5 million option bonus. So they did put void years in the deal, and they did that for proration purposes, because you could only prorate any of those 3 bonuses out over 5 years. But obviously, if you're giving that second option bonus in 2025, there's only 3 years left of the deal. So they tacked on those 2 void years to spread that money out. It would mean, if he's not with the team, if the contract runs out, so to speak, and he becomes a free agent, since they can't tag him in 2028, there would be, because of the 2 void years, there would be $12.5 million in dead money. You obviously never want to have dead money, but by 2028, again, the cap may be 350 or something like that, so, or more. So, you know, 12.5 sounds like a lot now, but it's a kind of it's a minor number by then, where we expect the cap to be. So, so I don't feel like that's a, you know, if that was next year, like with Odell Beckham's deal, which I think is $11 million because of void years, that kind of hurts. But this one, that far down the road, if it gets to that point, isn't going to really hurt from a cap perspective. What's going to hurt is he won't be around, I guess, at that point. So yeah, I mean, that's 2026 number. The cap numbers jump from 22 this year to 23 next, to 43.5 in 2025, and then comes the big jump, 2026, the 4th year, and then 2027, the 5th year of the deal. Those numbers are $74.5 million in cap number. There's never been a cap number that high. I think that is the highest cap number in any present deal that's out there. Some are obviously the latter years of these big quarterback contracts are in the 50s. But I don't think anybody's ever come. I don't think anybody's got a 60, to be honest with you, at this point. So they know more about where the cap's going to be at that point. So that is something they, at least in the fourth year, they could restructure with void years if that's what they wanted to do. But certainly by that fifth year, I can't imagine him playing. I think it's possible to play that fourth year. Not at 74.5, but at a restructured number. But I certainly by the fifth year, I think something has to happen, because then again, you're getting back into the situation where if you can't tag him after that, you need to get something done before 2027 for sure. Probably 2026, but definitely before 2027 happens.
So Brian, given that the big jump in 2026, like you said, at the very least 2027, and then as you said, the no tag clause is huge. How would you compare the leverage for each side, Lamar and the Ravens, this time around, which by the way took almost 2 years?
Yeah.
Versus, so would you say maybe like it was 80-20? That's why I never hated that Lamar, put out there that he wanted to trade. I think that was a negotiation tactic because he didn't have very much leverage. Would you say maybe like 80-20 and then it might flip the other way? Lamar has 80-20. Like where would you put the leverage for each side the first time around versus what's going to happen the second time around?
Yeah, I mean, the longer you get into the contract, the more leverage Lamar gets. So at year three, after 2025, you're heading to 2026 and you're staring at that 74.5 million cap number, that huge raise there. Then the leverage there is probably 50-50 because it's okay, let's get something done kind of thing. And this is going to benefit both of us kind of and maybe now that they've gone through it, maybe it'll be easier this time. Who knows, but as you get, right. But as you get to 2026, and again, once you get to 2027, I mean, if there's no deal before extension before 2027, and you're hitting that last year, I mean, I'm putting the leverage at 90% for Lamar, because you got to get something. I mean, you got to get something done, or I'm a free agent, and all you get is a third-round comp pick when I leave.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's huge, and they can't trade him, so they can't use that. So that's where the no trade clause doesn't mean anything in the beginning, but at that point it does, because they can't say, okay, well, we can't work out a deal with you, so we're going to trade you somewhere without his approval. And there's the leverage again. So he gets to go to the other team. Okay, go to other. We're back to other teams. Him being able to talk to other teams as his agent and work out a deal potentially with them. But then they're going to give him a huge contract, and where at that point, it all ends up being. I think it might be 95% at that point if it gets that far down. Early on, it's, we get to 2025, let's get something done to benefit both of us. Who knows how many other quarterback contracts will happen the guys because the guys that are going to be drafted this year will be getting contracts by then, so we're way down the road, and, that 74.5 maybe won't be so crazy, but yeah, by that last year, I mean, Lamar has them by the what.
Why don't we finish here? And I know, Sarah, you're up against the clock, so feel free to bounce whenever. But I wanted to bring up your chart that you put together in terms of the comparison, the Josh Allen versus Lamar career cash flow. And before we dive into this, I wanted to share a texting conversation between Brian and I from back in March. This was well before the deal ended up getting done, mind you. But I said, Brian, this thought that Lamar will never make up the millions he's lost compared to Josh Allen, fact or fiction? Brian, you write back and say, I mean, we don't know what the eventual contract will be, but overall, I think so. On average, he would have made over 40 million per year over the last 3 years versus 1.3 million, and then 23 million on the obviously on the franchise. On the 5th-year option, and then the 32 million that he would have made on the non-exclusive franchise tag. Even if the APY is higher on an eventual deal versus 43 million per year if he signed back in 2021, the money he'll make going forward is going to be top of the market either way. But the money lost over 2021 to 23, plus, in your opinion, the long-term security that was involved there can't be made up. What do you think now after diving into this thing thoroughly? You still stand by that?
Yeah, I mean, the deal worked out so that it's pretty close, and I mean, in the end, and I'm not seeing this as well as I can because my eyes aren't as good as they used to be. But okay, so yeah, I mean, obviously, it works out that I mean, this is a monster deal, so obviously the cash flow is different now. The difference that's going to happen is Allen is, once Mahomes gets his deal, Allen will get his deal, and these numbers on Allen's side are going to change as well. So, and they're always going to change. So in the end, I guess it's worked out. It's worked out pretty well for Lamar. I mean, the monster numbers, and obviously, they were up against the gun again, and we got to get this done. And so I think that helped and the Ravens have always been heavy cash flow in the early years. I mean, that's the way they've done their deals. So I was thinking on this deal was going to be a $60 million signing bonus and a $10 million cap, $10 million salary. So the cap charge would have been the 22 million. But they obviously did it different with the much bigger bonus and the smaller base salary. So, it's worked out. It's certainly worked out for Lamar, and I'm going to trying to. My eyes are terrible, even with glasses on.
Let me for the audio people who don't get to see this, and that'll probably help you, Brian. So I put this together because we had done an episode. I can't remember if you had come on or we had quoted you from another one, but Bobby and I had said that he wasn't ever going to be able to make it up, and so I'm holding myself accountable too here.
Yeah.
So what I did is I went to Over the Cap, and I got, because I know they're the most trustworthy, I got all the running cash flow from them, or the cash flow paid out. So basically by 2022, which was the end of last offseason, Lamar was behind Josh Allen by 52 million. Now, why do we take Josh Allen? Because Josh Allen was drafted the same year, but remember, Josh Allen was drafted before Lamar, so he got a good head start. So you can maybe shave off maybe a little more than 10 million from that when he was deficit 52 million by the end of last year, because Lamar was eligible to get a deal done after his 3rd year and didn't. So that's where everybody was like, well, in 2021, Lamar was making only 1.7 million, where Josh Allen in cash flow, he got a bump of 37, almost 38 million that year. So, and then last year, Lamar fell behind even more. So the idea was like, well, he should have just gotten a deal with Allen. And then here comes this deal where it was the most money ever in the first year by a large margin. And so if they kept their current deals, which they won't, Lamar would basically be caught up by the end of 2023. He'd be down by, 500,000, but then he'd be totally above Josh Allen by 2 million by 2024. So, but obviously after 2024, we just talked about the Ravens are going to want to do something after 2024. I was looking at Josh Allen's deal. A nice spot to redo his deal is 2024, but he could push, as you just said, like Mahomes, and not wait all the way till then. And so that's going to be, to me, what would really decide who's ahead or not, because if Josh Allen does his deal next year, then he'll jump ahead again. So to me, it's always about when all these guys restructure. But if they played out their contracts, Lamar would catch up by 2024.
Yeah, and he would. And it's like I said, it definitely has worked out for him. And obviously the structure of Allen's deal, he's more, I mean, a lot of the money, other than the big option bonus he got in 2022, his money is much more backloaded because of the length of the deal. And Mahomes was the same. They don't see the whereas Lamar's, as we talked, Lamar's got that 156 up front in those first 3 years. Allen and Mahomes deals were not cash heavy in the early years, and obviously your graphic shows that. So that's where Lamar certainly is making it up and making it up quickly. To be honest with you.
So, Brian, why don't we finish here? Just given the Rocky Sin signing, given the undrafted rookie class, given the rookie deals, from the draft that are starting to be finalized here, where do the Ravens stand overall with their salary cap?
Yeah, so we still don't have Rocky Sin's numbers. My guess is they'll use void years again to keep that low. Without Rocky Sin and without Zay Flowers, because he's not signed yet. He's the only draft pick that hasn't signed yet. They're at about 13 million. They're going to need more. They just do your off-season business. Sign your practice squad. Have money for practice squad elevations during the season, and then obviously guys that are on PUP and IR, and then having money to go into the season. That usually is about 15 million these days by itself. So that puts them, to be honest with you, under that right now. They're but they haven't restructured any of their contracts, any of their big contracts yet, between Stanley and Humphrey and Andrews and Roquan Smith and so forth. They could create another 26 million. I think it was 26 or 27. So they've got plenty of flexibility. They'll have. I don't know that they're going to have any big signings at this point anyway. But the important thing, and DeCosta's shown he likes to do it, is they should have money in the season. So at the trade deadline, if they need to make a trade, obviously, Roquan Smith last year, and then Peters, 3 years ago, great midseason. I mean, both of those transformed to defense, to be honest with you. And I know 2 years ago, I think it was, DeCosta lamented that they didn't have, that space to make kind of move like that. So, so he likes to be aggressive that way. They ought to be able to have that space. I mean, they'll have space. I mean, I don't know what Marcus Peters is going to make, but obviously the market is not real hot for him at this point, seemingly. So, if there's a guy like him or Justin Houston, there's room to get those guys in to be creative with the contract. So maybe they use void years, maybe they don't. Incentives like they did last year. I mean, Houston, I think, made extra $2 million, I think, from sacks and playing time. So they have the flexibility they need, and it's nice to see for once to be able to say that.
For sure. Well, Brian, as always, man, you are so thorough. Again, we want to remind everybody that your work can be found at Russell Street Report, also on Twitter, as you see there on the screen, at Ravens Salary Cap. We appreciate you for dropping by, and hope you enjoy the rest of off season here. You're kind of transitioning into you're kind of it's ramping up for us, right? But you're going to kind of chill these next couple months, aren't you?
Yeah, it slows down, and then when we get to roster cut downs and things like that, when we have to talk about these, how much it's going to cost for the practice squad and all that. But yeah, for the time being, it'll calm down for sure, especially after these last 2 years.
All right, you guys. Well, Sarah, awesome stuff. Brian, thanks so much. And again, we will next be in action for our live stream coming up on Thursday night at 7:30 for the annual unveiling of the 2023 NFL regular season schedule. So be on the lookout for that. As always, thanks for dropping by Inside the Vault. Special guest Brian McFarland will definitely have you back. And again, thanks for joining us, guys. Talk to you soon.